Good morning. Thank you so much for the invitation to join you. Thank you, Pastor Michelle. I am grateful. And I also thank the Spirit Garage community for participating in Agate's Walk in the Life last March, our fundraising event downtown. Again, my name is Mike Menner. I'm with Agate Housing Services. Agate was formed a few years ago from the merger of St. Stephen's Human Services and House of Charity downtown. I wish I could say I'm an artist. Thinking of a career change 25 years ago, I did go to cooking school, so I guess culinary artist, maybe. I married an artist and a photographer, and she's also a garden artist. She paints by planting flowers that are going to bloom in different colors at different times, and the flower arrangements in our home are just beautiful. My background, so in college I studied political science and Latin American studies, and I was deeply inspired by Monsignor Oscar Romero, the Archbishop in San Salvador. So this was the late 80s, and I just was so inspired by the way the Spirit moved in him. He used to be very protective, and with all the turmoil in the Civil War in El Salvador, for a while he was hewing to the kind of hiding and not really speaking out. But then when he saw the effect that the wars were having on the people of El Salvador, to the poor, he spoke out and realized we have to act on behalf of the people. That was going to drive me. I thought, I'll become a Maryknoll priest. I'll go down and I'll work as a missionary in El Salvador. And then I realized, no, there's so much need closer to home. So when I graduated from college, I joined the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, a one-year volunteer program working at St. Stephen's. In their program then was called the Alliance of the Streets. And then after my JVC year was done, I decided, well, I moved up here from Cleveland, so Minneapolis seems all right. I'll stick around and see what happens. And that's what I call my year in the wilderness of temp jobs. All around downtown, and 2 weeks typing, and 3 weeks there. And after that year in the wilderness, I basically ended up back at St. Stephen's and have not left. And in large part, we talk about the Spirit that dwells in us that has kept me in that compassion for the lives. I mean, I still think years ago how unimaginable, I was right here out of college from suburban Cleveland, and people are living lives that I had no idea about. And how can I do anything for that? The running joke is, it took me 6 months to speak to someone without being spoken to first. But I found a home there, and that's one of the reasons I have stayed, is because of that, that spirit and that ability to do something. I think in reviewing some of Julia Cameron's writing about compassion, well, one of them is being an artist requires enthusiasm more than discipline. And yes, I can definitely use more discipline, but it's that enthusiasm for the many hats that I do wear at Agate. One of those is creating and publishing this Handbook of the Streets, a resource guide that we are able to hand out at our office, and agencies buy them from us to give out to people in need, that lists all the different resources. That's where discipline is helpful, because I'm trying to finish up the new St. Paul handbook. And so I have this list of all the last kind of my punch list. Construction people will have their punch list before a project is done. And for me, it's getting the last things together, even choosing the color of the new book. The very first handbook was printed 6 months before I started working at St. Stephen's. And so we've now done 23 Minneapolis books, and the 19th St. Paul book will come out next month. And the last question that I get asked what color is it going to be? And I always have to tell people, that's the last thing I get to choose, because I have to do all these other things. It's going to be red. It will be the new color. And I have a box with each book that's ever been printed, so I can see which haven't we used in a while. Agate's story, starting with St. Stephen's, was that they started some programs in the 1970s. They were a very progressive Catholic parish, very much rooted in Catholic social teaching. And in 1981, there were more, things that had happened during the Reagan administration. There are all suddenly many more people who are homeless, and people would be sleeping on the church steps and in the little covered entryway to the side entrance of the church. And it was the parish members who said, this can't be. We are, the gospel tells us we need to act on behalf of the poor. So they converted what was a parish library in that 1950s church rectory building. They converted that to an emergency shelter. Mats on the floor it started with, I think, 25 men, and then in the last years, right as COVID was hitting, they were still operating out of that rectory basement with bunk beds for 45 to 50 men. And then COVID had its own effects where suddenly they're housing people in shelter or in hotels. And then after that funding ended, they moved we had merged with House of Charity, which has its own history going back to the 50s, so a temporary shelter was there. And now we operate a downtown shelter at First Covenant Church for couples, the only couples shelter in Minneapolis. And I'm thrilled to say that in this fall, we will open our brand new shelter over in the Longfellow neighborhood, the Valiants. And that is going to have 54 shelter beds for women. But then there will also be 50 apartments on the top 2 floors. And the design, it's amazing. We've come a long way from the mats on the church basement floor. But what's incredible about this design is that they listen to people who have lived experience of homelessness. What is it we should do? How should we do this? And one of the big issues is that in shelter or some of these apartments, when you've moved from homelessness to shelter, there's no community. You suddenly are isolated. And so the shelter design is one that has 6 beds in 9 different pods. So instead of bunk beds or anything, it's sort of like 6 little bed cubicles. But you have a locked storage, you're somewhat separated, but you're not totally separated. And those apartments upstairs range from a 1-bedroom to an efficiency where everything's all in one room, to single rooms. There are a few different layouts of those single rooms where you might have your own bathroom, but you share kitchen and bathroom and living areas. Or actually, you might have your own bathroom, but then you share kitchen and living. And then there's these other sets of single rooms where you share bathroom and kitchen and living, but it's your own space, but you're in community. So that is just remarkable. Part of the Agate story, too, is that we have this whole continuum of services that start with street outreach. People who are living on the streets, our team is going out and checking in on encampments. They do drop-ins a couple mornings a week at our main office, and people can meet them there. They can see the healthcare for the homeless nurse on Wednesday mornings. They can have mail sent to our address. They can pick up the handbook. One of my other hats is helping people get birth certificates from around the country. Just last year, we helped almost 900 people get birth certificates from 46 different states and territories. And if you're in shelter or you don't have a good address, well, have it come here. I'll hold on to it for you. And when I hold on to it, how long do you think I might hold those? Any guesses? Well, not forever, but 10 years. And I've had people come, just last week I had someone applying for an Indiana certificate. And I go, well, I'll copy your ID, you double check my form, sign it, and I come back and here's that certificate we ordered for you 4.5 years ago. Her name was familiar enough. There have been some Smiths that have slipped through the cracks. So I have 2 for Jim Smith, but because people's lives, when you're homeless, everything's it's a kind of chaos. And how do you keep track of these things? And that's part of me. That's part of my enthusiasm and where discipline helps out. There also was a quote from Julia from Chuck Close. the artist, that inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. And so that's, for me, that's always been my motto. I do what I can, and I show up. So that's, if I can keep someone from having to wait 3 or weeks, or in some cases 3 months, for a new certificate to come in by giving them that one that I had, then I'm doing my part. So we do street outreach, and then we have housing programs where people can move from shelter to these permanent housing programs, or maybe it's just a rapid rehousing program. They just need help getting back on their feet, and then they don't need our help anymore. And then ways that we can prevent people from becoming homelessness. There, in the next room, one of these flyers kind of shares that continuum of the care that we share with people. Everything from being on the streets to shelter to the permanent housing, and then preventing people from becoming homelessness. And then on the back, there are just some nice numbers about what we do. And one other thing I'll say about Agate that makes us remarkable is 42% of our staff have lived experience of homelessness. So people have been on that one end, experiencing the services, maybe seeing how some places didn't do it well. How can we do it better? And we've always been innovative, and we always are trying to create new things, like this new beautiful shelter. So I'll end with a couple invitations for you. One is that for both our downtown shelter right now, and then when the Valiance opens in the fall, one of our needs is for groups or families or neighborhoods to get together and make lunches, make kind of bag lunches for our guests. And there's a little blue flyer that has information about that, how you could sign up. There's a schedule of open days to do that. And then the other is come and join us on Thursday, October 9th at 3:30 p.m. We're going to have a grand opening for the Valiance. The Valiance is a block from the Cub Foods, right by Lake and Minnehaha. 28th Street and 27th Avenue. And so we're going to have a big celebration. We'll have a big cookie party and a silent auction, and you can take a look at this new beautiful space. I'm just so excited. No offense to our roots on the basement of the rectory, the floor of St. Stephen's back in 1981. That was groundbreaking, and it served people well, but we get to keep serving people and finding new and creative ways to do that. So thank you again for the invitation, and thank you for being creative in all the things that you do.